Hi guys, it's Dan and Peter from DT here. I've taken the trip from Denmark over here to fish our social at Berners Hall here, and usually me and Dan we have a lot of interesting talks over the phone. So we thought that we'd do like a little chat here about our type of fishing, not versus the English type or anything else, but just like have a chat about different ways that we do things would be interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
And just sort of like maybe a bit about rigs. We don't know. We'll take it from there. But so,
I think the most strikingly obvious thing that differs between my fishing to yours is probably the waters that you fish. I mean, tell us about the sort of places that you're fishing.
well, obviously back home in Denmark we do have smaller lakes and stuff. I prefer the really big reservoirs. You know, like there'll probably be 200 acres and over, up to 700, 800 acres, something like that. Unknown stock sometimes, mostly anyway. And it's just a total different style to obviously what you're doing. When we go to France, we'll visit commercial lakes as well, but obviously big classic lakes as well, you know, thousands of acres. That's what I really get on with. And I think, you know, the style of fishing, it's you know, maybe our type of fishing is more crude in a way, you know, sometimes.
Yeah,
It's maybe not as finicky anyway.
Yeah. I guess the fish that you're fishing for are slightly different as well. I think one of the things with the English scene is that the lakes they're so busy.
Yeah,
particularly
definitely.
since COVID, it's got even worse. But where the lakes are so busy, those fish see a lot. Whereas you know you're fishing these huge expanses of water. Some of those fish have probably never seen a hook.
No, definitely. Yeah. It's probably on here like we're talking about 600-700 fish. I don't even know how big the lake is, but it's a lot of fish in front of us. And I feel anyway that here I'm angling against or fishing against the angling pressure. You know, the fish wise up, you know, they see a lot of bait and different things. So you have, in my eyes anyway, you have to choose a lot of tactics here, you know, try do maybe something different to what's being popular or whatever you would call it at the moment. Yeah.
It must be nice though, having all that space and all that water to yourself, but also a bit desolate at times, I'd imagine.
Yeah, definitely. I like the solitude personally. It's, you know, it's a good way to sort of like relax.
So setting up on a lake like that, I take it you have to get into a boat out to where you want to be fishing.
Yeah, I think that obviously back home it's a big plus if you have access to a boat. Not all lakes do allow boats, but you know, definitely you go with boats to find the fish as well.
Yep.
You know, you use boats to locate the fish in certain lakes where you can, where it's clear. But a lot of our lakes are very green, so you don't really see fish. So often it's all like hit and miss a lot.
Wow.
To be honest, you got to have an idea about, okay, the fish might be in this area, or if you see one show, because they rarely show, you know, there's probably a lot in that area, so you stay there. But sometimes, you know, you can't access that easy, so there's a lot of distance fishing as well, you know.
So does pre-baiting play a big part of your fishing?
Definitely. I think I found that obviously in springtime, it's other things than food that gather the fish up. It's more like, you know, spawning time and heat. They'll always have some kind of food accessible nearby, and they don't seem to be eating big amounts the way back home anyways. But autumn time is definitely a good way to sort of like gather fish to your area.
Okay.
You know, because obviously usually not a lot of people will be baiting up, so you can go on these big lakes and you don't have an idea of stock, but it would be low.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
we're probably talking maybe between 50 to 100 fish in hundreds of acres.
Wow.
So, you know, a lot of bait. Finding an area is not always easy, but baiting up and then obviously doing it for a prolonged period of time, maybe a month, every second day with 20 to 40 kilos of mixed stuff going in. Yeah,
Wow.
boating out, baiting up, going back, you know, every second day, and then obviously fishing on it
It's crazy.
after a month's time. Yeah.
So give me an example of an average trip for you out fishing. So for me personally, it would be like I get 24 hours if I'm lucky each week. But for yourself, what's the sort of length?
If we take like the trips that I do abroad away, and just say like my normal fishing back home, it'll be overnighters usually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll go to work. We close at 5:30. I'll drive home, have a bit of food, go straight out to the boat, and you put the gear in the boat out to the swim, fish, get up at 7 in the morning, go to work, and then obviously, you know, go home after work and see, you know, spend time with my girlfriend and my grown-up kids, and then go out fishing again. And that's, you know, springtime and autumn time, you know, it's usually a month every single day.
And those months, are they the ones that you tend to sort of concentrate on?
Yeah, I think our climate is colder, so I would say that from the first, beginning of May is a good time. You can catch earlier, but May into June, start spawning. End of May, beginning of June. That's pretty usual in the last couple of years when it's heated up. So and autumn time, it'll be general September, because I usually go to France in October for a long period of time. So yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, but what about you then? So, like your fishing here is I've seen what's the general. I know you get tickets here. You get day tickets. Do you prefer the syndicates to the day tickets?
Yeah, I do prefer syndicates. I think without sounding a bit snobby or anything, I think capping the number of people that you have on a lake, and also being able to vet who's fishing. Yeah. Whereas on a day ticket, you could be next to people that are just going to be casting all over you, causing problems. Thankfully, the syndicates that I'm part of, they tend to have, most people seem to have a bit of etiquette about how they fish and stuff like that. And you can get a bit of pre-baiting going, and people sort of leave you alone to do your thing. That's quite important. But yeah, I mean, I will fish club lakes as well. Yeah. A few club lakes. There's a few near me, and the fish are really coming through and looking lovely at the moment. So yeah, I've just got a ticket for one about 15 minutes from my house. So. And
usually, obviously, I know that I've noticed that lakes come in different sizes, like everywhere else. But what do you prefer, like the real small, intimate ones? Like, let's say they're 1 to 2 acres, but what I would describe as a very, very, very small lake, and places like 10 acres and upwards are bigger lakes. What do you prefer?
I fish both, and I've enjoyed both. But I do think there's something about a smaller, more intimate lake, nice deep margins, clear water where you can watch them in the edge. Climb trees, stuff like that. I love that. That's a bit of me. That is.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but what I'm fishing at the moment is a bit of a mixture of places.
Okay.
There's some larger lakes, 20 acres, and some smaller.
And then obviously, like your tactics for fishing places like this, I'd like to hear about that. So you go out on your syndicate, bait wise. So let's talk about, I know you like boilies and stuff like that. What sizes do you usually use,
So it does vary from venue to venue. There's a big park lake that I'm fishing. It's about 40 to 50 acres, and it's absolutely rammed full of bream and crays.
Okay, yeah.
So I tend to, that's where I fell in love with the M-blend, using that, because it allowed me to get through to the carp.
Okay.
But I tend to go for bigger baits, 18s.
All right.
Not to your extent.
No. But I was thinking, is there any
24 mils or something?
not
that big. No. But yeah, 18s are good for me.
But why would you have a problem throwing out a 24 mil bait or a double 24 mil bait out there?
Probably, yeah. I would. I think it's what you're comfortable with. I've never personally fished abroad.
No. But,
and I've never been able to get my head round baits of that size. Although saying that, I have fished 218 mils wrapped in paste previously, so
yeah, that's still pretty big,
bait,
like that.
Yeah, and I've caught on it, so I can see that it would work, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll look into that. I might go up to 20 mils.
No, I was just thinking, obviously, like the food items that some of the fish eat differs from, obviously venue to venue, but if you think about some of the fish back home, and that's not like continental water or anything, that they eat mussel. Like they'll pass shells, like massive pieces of shells, and you have to think about it, like the size of the mussel, all right? What when that was whole had to be quite big.
Yeah.
So they'll obviously eat really big stuff as well. And I was pretty, going for like 224s, but we've fished 230s and 232s as well. We've done dumbbells, like elongated one, like big things, to sort of like keep the bait in place from nuisance fish when you're fishing long distance and stuff like that. It's not so much like, I don't believe that you're necessarily catching bigger fish because of bigger baits. To some extent, you're obviously the smaller ones, but we've had 5-10 kilo fish on double 24s.
Wow.
So you will catch them. And the interesting part is we went on a couple of years, probably about 10 years ago, I'll be honest to say, but we went on Fryonings Fishery.
Yeah.
We were able to fish that for like 3 nights. And obviously we spoke to people on there, has a lot of crayfish back then, and all small plastic baits, all that kind of stuff. And we hadn't brought anything like that. So you know, interestingly enough, we spoke to the guys at the company and said, oh, you know, we'd like some 22 mil end blends to go on there. And I think we had 2 fish in 3 days. It wasn't. It's not
Not the easiest.
to my extent, not the easiest place, but you know, Michael caught a 40 pounder and a 30 pound. The size doesn't really matter that much to that extent. But it's interesting that we went on there and caught on the bigger baits.
Wow.
You know.
Might be something in that. I think I'll be looking into it.
Yeah, I think that, you know, try that a little bit.
So, run me through some of your rigs, your preferred rigs, and the situations you fish them in.
If I am, I do a lot of boat fishing back home and abroad, obviously. So there it'll usually tend to be like normal lead clip rigs with lead core or like heavy leader material, because there's usually a lot of snags and mussels and different things. Rig wise, I go for something that tends to be quite simple. I like semi-stiff materials. They can be like the German type of rigs, you know, where you tie them directly on the hook and you've got a sliding swivel on there with a little stop.
I noticed that looking at your rig earlier actually, and I'm going to give away one of your little hacks here, but you wind the lead wire round where the bead is to stop the for the swivel. You've got lead wire, a few sort of wraps round, and then you glue it.
Exactly. What I found is that obviously one thing is, you're like casting like big distance, sometimes that hook bead can move.
Don't let it slip.
Yeah. So obviously, so you can add some tubing to it, but I found with that lead wire, it does 2 things. It obviously locks it in place so it can't move further than that, but it also adds a bit of extra weight to the hook. So you know, it's all like easier to balance baits and stuff like that if you want to go like with different pop-ups. But it also helps. That rig is a bit different because it doesn't have the normal mechanics, because it's really stiff and stuff like that.
No kicker on it either, which I was a bit like, wow. Okay.
There is no kick on it. So it does, like, you know, help it turn a little bit. I think that why, even though it's so little, but when everything underwater works differently than over water. So I actually got it here. So like, you know, that's it.
It's quite simple, like without, you know, putting down your rig. It's a very well-tied rig, but it's a simple rig, isn't it?
It's not very simple.
Yeah.
But the issue with this is sort of like it doesn't tangle. Very rarely, you know, when casting. It's just out there, and you know, there's a few things with it, so it doesn't tangle. It lies down nicely. You can fish it on a lead clip, you can fish it on a helicopter rig, and it just flattens down. You know the hook's going to be on the deck. That, obviously, in this situation, I really like it with balance baits or snowmans. This has been set up for here, so it's smaller baits because that's what I'm fishing with at the moment as well. But I wouldn't have a problem. This is a size 4 hook. I wouldn't have a problem with using a 24 mil balance bait on this.
Really?
No, not at all.
And talking about bait, what's your?
Well, for this session, I've obviously done a few things that I'm thinking about before we come over. Is I've decided already I was going to use the cold water green beast, because obviously the water here is not very warm. It's very early spring, and it hasn't been that warm. So that was my go-to. I found years ago, you know, trying different combinations. I've got a 12 mil superfruit on top of that. It just balances it nicely. It's not like a really bright bait. It's a little bit like pink pastel, and I think, you know, it adds a little bit of changes from the other baits, you know, a bit more sight to it, easier for the fish to find.
A bit more sight, but it doesn't look too obvious.
No, it's not like
almost like it's faded.
No, it's not. It's not like exactly. It's not like a white bait, and it's not like a bright yellow one, is it? And the combination of the superfruit with the green beast is just something I found that worked really well. We used that in France as well, Luke Moffat's Lake, in bigger sizes. And we've caught some absolutely smashing fish on it. And, you know, to be fair, I have had a few here on this trip on it as well, so I'm really happy with that.
What have you had, Peter?
About a 44 and a 31, so pretty chucked with that, obviously.
Don't ask me that question.
No. I'm not going to ask you, Dan. I'll leave it to that. But yeah, so that's it really. Simple, easy does it, you know, and just to finish this off about the rig and the snowmans, this is one of my favourites for like late spring.
Okay.
Yeah, if I was to fish, let's say we'd been in January, February, I would probably have added a singer on top of this.
A singer?
Yeah, a 12 mil, like for the citrusy part of it. That's something I've found for colder weather. That combination with this works really nice.
The cold water green beast and the zinger?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that really much.
That's interesting.
That's a nice one. We've had some good fish on that. Back on that water temperature is 3 degrees, you know.
Wow.
We were talking about 8 degrees here now, which is, it's not high or anything, but for our standards at this time of year, that's high.
It's warm.
Yeah, it's quite warm, and the fish will definitely be feeding more. We've seen hatches and stuff like that. But yeah, no, this early spring, probably into late May, this is what I use, you know, that combination back home if I was to use a snowman anyway.
Okay, and do you get a lot of weed on your lakes?
On some of them, you know, like I said, most of them are like really green, you know, so we don't get a lot of weed. We do have some clear waters that have a lot of weed, so we don't combat that the same way. We generally, our lakes are really silty, you know, like old stuff on there, and
But
very
if you were
green.
fishing in weed, would you use a pop-up rig, or would you still use that?
Well, I tried not to avoid weed because I know the fish go in there, but I try to find clear spots, and especially if you're using boat, that's the possibility to find the clear spot to present something on. When I'm fishing on the like the bigger lakes where the fish are a lot of naturals, I will use a match the hatch bottom bait or a balance bait that I've rolled myself, like on a cork ball, balance them off. No pop-ups or anything to single out. Well, it's because of bird life there. You know, if you get bright stuff on it, they'll dive on it.
Right.
Yeah. So usually for the fishing, I'll use that. But this is sort of like for the let's call it the early fishing and smaller lakes back home. But for the autumn fishing, I'd go totally different. I wouldn't use this.
Okay,
I'd use the same rig. Same rig, but with different bait on there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But obviously fishing, I think that it tends to sort of like when you get weed, it's so different. You've got high weed, you've got silk weed, you've got all different types. You know, I don't really like to present my stuff in that, to be honest. But sometimes you don't have a choice. But everywhere I go, I'd rather not be fishing in weed.
See, I found that I think some of the lakes over here, I've fished lakes that previously have had very, very little weed, but in the last few years, for whatever reason, climate change, whatever it might be, they seem to have been getting really, really weedy. So I kind of quite enjoy fishing in the weed.
Yeah?
I quite like that. And I did that here on the first time. I picked what was a really unfavourable peg because it was absolutely swamped with weed. And I just quite happily fished naked chod in the weed. There were no spots to be found.
No.
There was lower weed and higher weed.
Yeah, exactly.
That was it.
You don't have a choice then. Yeah,
no,
exactly,
you've got to get good with it. So you just got to fish in the weed. So yeah, I just fished cold water green beast pop-ups, and that was May.
Yeah.
So cold water green beast pop-ups on the choddy, and then just catapulted baits over the top, half baits and stuff, so they'd flutter down and sit on the weed, and it did me well. And I've used it on other lakes as well, where I tend to sort of, a lot of people shy away from weedy corners and stuff like that. But the fish, like you say, they get in there because that's where all the naturals are.
I agree on that one though, and I think as well, obviously, if you've got weedy areas, maybe because of we're talking about pressure on the lakes, that they tend to get fish less, so the fish might be feeding more confidently in those areas. Whereas back home, you know, bait's there, you know, weed, all right, bait, they'll feed on it anyway. So I totally agree with you. I think that obviously in this session, you know, I've had silkweed in the swim as well, and I couldn't find any on the marker float, but reeling the rigs in, there was silkweed on the rigs. But I'm still sure, like we're talking about silk as well, they will go in there, they'll dig out the bait if they want it. So it's not a big issue with it. It's a mindset thing, isn't it? Mind thing about the presentation, that you don't like it being covered in weed and different things. So, and I think obviously with the silkweed here, we're talking about using spinner rigs would be the perfect presentation, but I think they might have been done to death on here. I'm not sure.
Yeah, some tactics do blow,
don't they? Get hammered anyway. Yeah. Well, they'll always be. They can be catchable on anything.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can say. Oh, they can't catch them on this. You can't catch them on that. Yeah, you know, it's the same.
So moving forward, you've obviously had this trip now. Have you got any more European trips planned?
Yeah, we've got quite a bit this year as well. We've got 3 weeks. We're going to Graviers, Luke Moffat's Lake again for a couple of weeks. Then I'll be doing obviously my usual fishing back home for hopefully like about a month before this fish spawn. Hopefully the weather will be nice enough.
Kind to you.
Yeah, sort of, you know, that's it. And after that, I usually take the break over the summertime, don't go fishing then, and I'll be back into autumn, September back home, and then we've got October. We've got obviously some of the big French in-water lake, inland seas going that, and then Gigantica for the usual trip, and that'll be it for this year again.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Hopefully we'll get a few chunks, and you as well, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to get out there for some fishing with you.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to join us.
Thank you, mate.
Just let us know.
Yeah, it'd be good.
Yeah, but cheers for the chat anyway. And
no worries, you're welcome.
for the good company at the lake. It's been really brilliant.
It's been a good laugh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Thanks, mate.